The relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan is one of the most complex and enduring geopolitical sagas in the modern world. A story of neighbors bound together by history, religion, language, bloodlines, and trade, yet divided by politics, mistrust, and security concerns. To understand where we are today, you have to go back far before Pakistan even existed as a country, before Afghanistan had defined borders, to a time when this region was simply a crossroads of empires, caravans, and warriors. For thousands of years, the lands that make up modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan were part of overlapping civilizations. The Persian Achaemenid Empire, the Mauryan Empire of ancient India, the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, the Kushan Empire, and later the Ghaznavids, Ghurids, and Mughals. The passes connecting the two regions, especially the famous Khyber Pass, were not just geographic routes. They were arteries of trade, migration, and conquest. Afghan cities like Kandahar and Herat were tied culturally and economically to cities like Peshawar, Multan, and Lahore. People moved freely, and the concept of a fixed border simply didn't exist. That changed in the 19th century during the so-called A Great Game between the British Empire and Tsarist Russia. Afghanistan became a buffer state between British India to the south and Russian Central Asia to the north. In 1893, the British drew a frontier to demarcate their territory from Afghanistan, the Durand Line. This 26-40-kilometer line, named after Sir Mortimer Durand, was meant to be a diplomatic solution, but became the root of one of the longest-running disputes in South Asia. It cut straight through Pashtun tribal lands, separating families and clans. Many Afghans, then and now, have never accepted it as a legitimate international border. When Pakistan was created in 1947, after the partition of British India, the new state inherited the Durand Line. Afghanistan, however, refused to recognize it as a permanent border. In fact, Afghanistan was the only country in the world to vote against Pakistan's entry into the United Nations, citing its opposition to the border and demanding a referendum for Pashtuns in Pakistan's northwest to decide whether they wanted to join Pakistan, Afghanistan, or have an independent Pashtunistan. This early hostility set the stage for decades of suspicion. In the 1950s and 1960s, tensions flared repeatedly over the Pashtunistan issue. Afghanistan closed its border with Pakistan several times, cutting off trade. Pakistan accused Kabul of stirring up separatism among Pashtuns in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, while Afghanistan accused Islamabad of suppressing Pashtun identity. These disputes sometimes escalated into small-scale armed clashes. At the same time, Afghanistan moved closer to India, Pakistan's arch-rival, further fueling Islamabad's fears of strategic encirclement. Then came the seismic shock of 1979. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to support its communist government against an armed insurgency. For Pakistan, this was both a crisis and an opportunity. With US, Saudi, and Chinese backing, Pakistan became the central staging ground for the Afghan Mujahideen, guerrilla fighters resisting Soviet occupation. Millions of Afghan refugees poured into Pakistan, particularly into Peshawar, Quetta, and sprawling camps in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. Pakistan's intelligence agency, the IC, coordinated the flow of weapons, training, and money to the Mujahideen. This gave Pakistan enormous influence over the Afghan resistance. But it also embedded militant networks inside Pakistani territory, networks that would later outlast the war. When the Soviets withdrew in 1989, Afghanistan descended into a brutal civil war among rival Mujahideen factions. Kabul became a battleground. Warlords carved up the country and lawlessness. Pakistan, seeking stability and strategic depth, threw its support behind a new force emerging from Kandahar in the mid-1990s, the Taliban. Composed largely of Pashtun students from religious schools, the Taliban promised to end corruption, disarm warlords, and impose strict Islamic law. By 1996, they had captured Kabul, and Pakistan became one of just 3 countries to recognize their regime. For Islamabad, the Taliban were not only an ideological ally, but also a strategic asset against Indian influence in Afghanistan. But Afghanistan under the Taliban also became a sanctuary for transnational jihadist groups, including Al-Qaeda. This led directly to the September 11, 2001 attacks in the United States and the subsequent US-led invasion of Afghanistan. Pakistan was suddenly caught in a tight spot. Under immense pressure from Washington, it joined the US war on terror, providing bases, intelligence, and logistical support. Publicly, Pakistan was America's ally. Privately, many in the Pakistani security establishment still saw the Afghan Taliban as a future partner once foreign troops left. This dual-track policy, cooperating with the US while maintaining links to the Taliban, fueled deep mistrust between Kabul and Islamabad. Afghan leaders accused Pakistan of harboring Taliban leaders in Quetta and the tribal areas, while Pakistan accused Kabul of turning a blind eye to the Pakistani Taliban, TTP, using Afghan soil as a base for attacks. Border skirmishes, assassinations, and political spats became common. Efforts at peace, like the Quadrilateral Coordination Group talks, repeatedly collapsed. Economically, the two countries remain tied together. Afghanistan is landlocked, and its trade depends heavily on Pakistani ports like Karachi and Gwadar. The Pakistan-Afghanistan Transit Trade Agreement, APTA, was supposed to make this easier, but disputes over smuggling, tariffs, and border closures undermined its potential. Every time political tension spiked, so did disruptions at border crossings like Torkham and Chaman, leaving trucks stranded and goods spoiled. Culturally and socially, the relationship is equally intertwined and tense. Millions of Afghans have been born and raised in Pakistan over the past 4 decades. Afghan restaurants, markets and music are part of Pakistani urban life, especially in Peshawar and Quetta. Yet Afghan refugees often face discrimination, and Pakistan has periodically announced mass deportations, citing security concerns. This has created resentment on both sides. Then came August 2021. The Taliban's stunning return to power after the US withdrawal. Initially, Pakistan celebrated what it saw as the removal of a hostile government in Kabul and the return of a friendly regime. But that optimism faded quickly. The Pakistani Taliban, TTP, escalated attacks inside Pakistan, and Islamabad accused the Afghan Taliban of sheltering them. Border firefights resumed. Disputes over the Durand Line flared again as Taliban fighters dismantled sections of Pakistan's border fence. Today, the relationship stands at another crossroads. On one hand, the two countries share an unbreakable geographic bond. Afghanistan needs access to Pakistani ports and markets. Pakistan needs a stable Western neighbor to focus on its economic recovery and security. On the other hand, decades of interference, proxy warfare, and mutual suspicion are hard to erase. The key to a better future lies in building trust through genuine counterterrorism cooperation, easing trade restrictions, and respecting each other's sovereignty. History shows that Pakistan and Afghanistan can never truly turn their backs on each other. Their fates are too deeply linked. Whether they remain trapped in cycles of mistrust or move toward a partnership that benefits both depends on bold leadership, patience, and the ability to prioritize the shared interests of their people over the politics of the past.